Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf, a life and leadership podcast where we live out loud the pages of the books that are on our shelves, with your host, Denise Russo and Sam Powell.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is our life and leadership podcast where we're living out loud the pages of the books that are on our bookshelves. My name is Denise Russo. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Sam Powell. We are talking through a book called The Joy at Work, and sometimes work doesn't feel so joyful. So I hope that this book will add value to you. Today, we're going to be talking about something that also isn't always so joyful, which is meetings.
So, don't we all love meetings? It's like your mug that says survived another meeting that should have been an email. I think we have all been there, done that. Have the t-shirt, don't want to do it again.
1,000,000,000%. So this is going to be a really good chapter today. The book has been really laid out interestingly because it is easy to read if you go one chapter at a time. So if you're new to listening to our show, then you don't have to have the book to go through these episodes with us, but it's really helpful for a deeper dive because the book is broken down into why should you even tidy these things up to begin with. And then we're going to talk about what happens when you start to be you're cluttered again with all the things you just cleaned up. It's sort of like laundry and dishes. It always gets more. Yeah. And then we really followed up towards the end here now, which is talking about what do you actually do specific at work, whether it's with the people, the places, the processes, and all of that kind of stuff. And so today that we're talking about meetings, it's going to be a flow into how you lead as a people leader better from now till the end of the book, and then what you can do about it as you start to get successes to share with others.
Yeah, and we talked about this when we finished the last book, is the last book was actually a little bit hard for the format that we use, right? Because we learn like read a little, do a little, read a little, do a little, right? Like live the book out loud. And the last one was tough because you kind of got the processes at the end, and so it was like we had all this build up, and then we're trying to like live that one out loud almost after the fact or at the end of it. This one, like you said, really is broken down. So like, I don't think a book could be set up more ideal for how we do this because it is just topic based. And what I'm finding that I love as we're going through this is like, it's when I think about tidying work, like I obviously thought about my desk, and then maybe thought about some of the other topics, like maybe my desktop, my emails. Okay, like I probably would have gotten there. But some of these other topics that we've been talking about, and even like the thing today, right? Like I've done the exercise of tidying up meetings many times in my corporate career, but I don't know that I would have really put it in this category. And so that's what I'm like loving about this, the way this book is set up, because it is so practical. You could really read one chapter, go do the thing, follow the exercises she gives, really tackle it, and then move on to the end. Like this isn't some book that you have to like read start to finish. This is something that you could read a single chapter in a morning and then go do the thing that day or that week, right? Read it on a Monday and then make it the goal of the week. Follow along on our episodes, listen to one a week and do it. I think it's just such a really nice practical structure and setup. And yeah, meetings are messy, and the longer you are somewhere, the messier they seem to get.
I agree. So she talks about, Marie Kondo, this is, I think, Scott's Sonenshein's chapter, but basically the gist is that it doesn't matter what your role is, it doesn't matter what your title is at your job, that it is possible to be more productive by having fewer and shorter meetings, whether you are the host or whether you're the participant. But there's simple things that you can do or steps you can take to help make your meetings twice as effective in half the time, which I love that sentence because, Sam, one of my favorite books that I gift out to a lot of people is called 15 Minutes, Including Q&A by Joey Asher, which really gets to the point quickly and very succinctly, like this book, about here's what you can actually do so that you're not wasting your time and the other people's times when you're having your meetings.
Yeah, I love that book. You recommended it to me years ago, and I recommended it to many, many people since then,
Mhm.
especially people who do a lot of like presentations. I
Mhm.
think it's just so key. And it's a really short book. So if you're looking for like a small practical guide, like all books need to be that short. Like show me how to do the thing and let me go do it. It's really great. But yeah, 15% of your satisfaction is based on the satisfaction of the meetings that you have, like that's just craziness to me. Like that's a huge percentage. But again, like if I think about it, how much time is spent in meetings, but thinking about your overall job satisfaction really being related to the satisfaction of the meetings that you attend is makes a lot of sense. Like I don't really think of it that way, but I think like when you take a second, it makes a lot of sense. And and they're important, right? I think some people are like, oh, we'll just get rid of all meetings. It's like, no, we need meetings, right? This is where we collaborate. This is where we come up with ideas. This is where we, feel that energy between people. But like, you got to do them right. You got to do them well. You've got to do the right ones at
Mhm.
the right time with the right people. And I think this is really good. And they walk through a really similar process in this chapter that they do in everything else, right? It's think about what your ideal meeting is, right? Which you and I love as coaches, right? Like, what's the ideal state? What's the goal here? What should that look like? And then really taking inventory, right? Gathering them up and thinking about, what they need to be and which ones are there and what's practical. And they keep doing this every chapter of like write it down on an index card, like the things that you can't tangibly touch, like your physical items in your desk. It's like, oh, is this write it out and then physically look at it. And I like that process a lot, especially when I think about meetings, because I've done this with my calendar a lot of times, like looking at it that way. But I like that process of like the intentionality of like, okay, let me take stock of all the meetings I've had for the last week, month, whatever. And then let me write them out on a card. And then let's decide which ones here are fitting the bill and which ones really aren't.
I like when you use the word intentionality because, and the way you just described it is something really interesting that is in the passion planner that I talk about a lot. Every
Mhm.
month, you do a journal of a look back and a look forward. And one of the questions it asks was take a look at the inventory of your time, which
Yeah.
is it's a planner. So it's like look at your calendar. How
Yeah.
did you spend, waste, or invest that time? And what would you do differently next time? So we're leadership coaches. And so it might be easy enough to say, if you're listening in and you're a people leader, sure, if you're the one hosting the meeting, you can think about what would an ideal meeting look like for my team or my group or whoever I'm presenting to. But the intentionality here is also for the participant. So if you are going to be accepting a meeting invite, even if it's sort of like you don't have a choice and you have to go to a meeting, you can
Yep.
still go with some intention, like, are you prepared? Do you know what the meeting is about? Was an agenda shared in advance? Are there things that you can bring to the table, like maybe you thought about questions you may like to ask if they're not brought up in the session? Or maybe you're an expert. I had a conversation with a client last week who's a younger, tenured person. And one of the parts of our conversation was around how frustrated she gets as an introvert, that sometimes she feels like she knows a solution or she knows something she wants to say, but she doesn't feel maybe that there's like an open space for her to contribute. And then she'll
Mm-hmm.
leave the meeting feeling like it was a lost opportunity. And so if you're a younger talent, speak up. Be able to be in a work environment where you feel like your opinion is trusted enough to speak up. And if you're not in that environment, then work with a coach so that you can build up your confidence. And if you're the leader and you're not opening that space for your younger talented people, then also get a coach so that you can learn how you can be more inclusive and not just have your meetings be about telling and communicating, but more so around collaborating and being able to get the results that you hoped for, I would imagine, before you set out the meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has this line here that says, many people have more latitude than they realize, because I think that a lot of people feel that like I'm a victim to these meetings that get put on my calendar. I have to attend. I can't speak up, right? I don't have the space to do the things that we need. But I think that the skill I would say people should focus on is learning to ask the right questions at the right time to gain more of that latitude, right? So it's like before a meeting, ask the question, what is that agenda, right? Like, what is the goal of this meeting? What is the purpose, right? You can always come at something around this like, hey, this might just be me, but like, I don't understand this. Like, could somebody help me? Because I use that phrase all the time, right? It's when I know something's wrong, but I'm trying to like hedge it a little bit without coming in with my real direct self of like, dude, what is this meeting? Like, this meeting is absolute junk. What's happening here? So instead of that, it's like, hey, I might be confused, but which always makes me laugh because I saw a meme on the internet that's like, there's never been a woman less confused than the woman who starts a sentence with, I might be confused here, but it's an easy way to like hedge into it, lowers the guard of the people you're asking the questions to, but it brings up the questions of like, what are we talking about? What is the goal, right? Like sometimes just exposing some of this stuff through questions. Again, find the right moment to do it. Usually it's before a meeting even starts, when it gets put on your calendar, as you're preparing, right? Hey, I was trying to get ready for this meeting. What's the goal here, right, for today? And asking those questions sometimes helps other people realize the problems that we're
Yeah.
facing, the problem with the meeting, the problem with the structure. And so, like, for people who are trying to figure out how much latitude they really have when it comes to meetings that maybe they aren't the owner of, sometimes just asking those right questions give you a lot of power. It's to me, that's a leadership skill. It's a self-leadership skill. It's you leading from the back. It's you, leading from the bottom of like, hey, let's think about this with but asking it in sort of a disarming way.
The author shares it like this by saying that if you do it out of genuine desire to come prepared, it probably
Mhm.
does soften the way that you're describing to do that,
Yep.
because you might realize that the meeting that you don't know what it really is about, maybe it really is relevant to your work, but also maybe it isn't. And so I think it's okay to get to the point, and maybe it comes later in your career when you feel more comfortable to say no, like respectfully declining a meeting. I'm responsible for this 3-day workshop next week, Sam, and I was expecting people to be like, I'm not coming from all day to all day every single day. But people are saying, well, I only got an invite for this part of the agenda, but I really want to be able to listen into this other part of the agenda because I think it will impact my role. And so we ended up going from these little meeting rooms to now, thankfully, with the internet, we have opportunities to invite a lot of people into our spaces because of things like Zoom and
Yeah.
Teams and Google Meet and things like that. But I think the point is if you are not going to add value or get value from the meeting,
Yeah.
then really take an inventory of your calendar and see, are those things that I need to participate in? And sometimes we don't have that choice. Like today, you and I are going to be cut off early from a meeting we intentionally set to do what we're doing today. But somebody with the last minute put a meeting on my calendar that I can't miss because of some sort of an obligation that causes for me to be there. But so maybe also, if you are hosting meetings, be thoughtful and respectful of the timing of when you send something and when the actual meeting is going to take place, unless it's something urgent. Like, let's say, I remember one time I worked somewhere and there was a leader who wanted to be able to tell the group that he was leaving the organization before the wildfire gossip trail spread. And
Mhm.
so when you see a meeting like that, you intentionally expect that if a meeting comes quickly, that there's something that's going to be said. Or like when you and I got laid off, we found out minutes beforehand that there was a mandatory meeting that we had to cancel other meetings that we were
Yeah.
on.
And those things happen, right? Like I worked in customer support, customer success for years and years. And like there are times where it's like, all right, something's on fire. We need to meet now. We need to do that, right? And it's again like while you're there, making sure that when you start the meeting, okay, what's the goal here, right? Like, hey, we did this last minute, but like, what are we trying to solve? Let's make sure we do that as fast as possible for everyone's sake, because everyone appreciates organization in meetings, right? Like your agenda for your 3-day, workshop, because there's an agenda, people can look at it and say, oh, actually, I think this part would be valuable, right? If you don't have that, if that's not something that doesn't get published till the day before, and people like there's not that opportunity. And so like the organization and the intentionality again behind meetings is is really, really key. But having those, like, again, I think the the best skills we can develop are starter skills. How do you start? How do you, right, start those questions of like, is this meeting really something I should go to? And figuring out how do you even start to get out of meetings, right? Like how do you say, when you're thinking this meeting doesn't sound relevant to me, how do you ask the person, hey, do you really need, like, what do you need me here for? Do you really need me? Is it okay if I skip, right? Like, asking those questions, entering in that dialogue can get you one, figuring out if you actually do need to really be there. But like those starters of conversations, I think are so important. And to the point of the person you were coaching with, like learning how to speak up in meetings. And building that confidence. And I actually just wrote an article around confidence about being that fundamentally confidence is self-trust. I trust that I trust myself that I can do whatever action that this is, right? Like I trust that if I speak up, my voice is useful and relevant and people will want to hear it and things like that. And so it's learning again the starters for how to speak up. How do you interrupt when there's no space? And again, like if you're in charge of the meeting, building space, let your ego go, figure out how you really, really do this, right? It's a real skill to lead a meeting. And building those up is really important when you're the one leading it. But when you're not the one leading it, which is most of the time, we're usually the attendees in meetings, then what are those skills to start to speak up, to start to ask the questions, to start to do whatever? Like if you can nail those, the rest of it's much easier because you usually have something valuable to add. You've got expertise, you've got a point of view and an opinion, things that could be really useful to a group. But if you never learn how to start, you never learn how to contribute really fully in the way that you need to. I think those are the skills, especially early on in your career, that you should prioritize: how to start, how to get in, how to just enter, right? Like I talk about like lowering the cost of entry, figuring out like how to just get in the game. And that's, to me, I think a lot of the like early skills when you're the participant side of it. And then when you're the leader, you got to build up the skills on leading meetings.
I think on the leading side, this is a good time to talk about the importance for the leader, especially if it's people you know that are coming to the meeting. You could have such a leg up if you understood human behavior. And I highly encourage you, if you are listening to this episode and you're a people leader and you've never taken the time to have some sort of human behavior assessment, whether it's Agile Brain or DISC, it could be Myers-Briggs, it could be a variety of other ones. We just so happen to be certified in Agile Brain and DISC. These tools help you also to invite people into those conversations. So it's a great tip for the younger talent, like you said, to be able to find ways of entry. But if you're the leader, it's also your objective as like the conductor of the orchestra, if you will, to bring all the instruments into the piece that you're creating in that environment.
Absolutely.
And so, here's the thing too, going to more meetings, the author says, doesn't make you more valuable. So I know some people who will want to sign up to go to every meeting because they think if they're present, then that makes them more valuable. But if you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, pause, meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, maybe the bathroom, meeting to meeting, not standing up, not drinking water, not taking notes, not getting any actions from it, and not producing any results from it, then all you did was fill your day with just listening like to a live television show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And he talks about like basically how anyone can bring more joy to a meeting and really what you should do when you're doing that. And I like, he gives 6 rules for that I think are really good. Like one is show up, like really show up to the meeting, right? I mean, I don't know how many meetings I've sat through in my life where it's like I'm half checking email while I'm sort of checked into the meeting. And it's like, if we could just focus in for 10 minutes, we could end this meeting and then I could spend 20 minutes doing the, email list or the to-do list or whatever, right? And we tend to want to split activities because meetings default to a half hour. We think we have to spend, the half hour dividing time. And it's like, really show up 100% to this meeting and focus in, come prepared, right? What is it about? What are we doing? Think about that before you do that. I used to do that at the beginning of my day. I would look at every meeting on my calendar and prepare all in one go. So I knew when I walked in, like I knew what was happening, what I needed. And that also gave me the opportunity 3 hours before, 6 hours before to say, what is this again? Like, is this something we need to do? Like I would inventory at the beginning of the week and then at the beginning of each day and just ask that question of like, is this, what do I need to do to prepare? And also give me that opportunity to be like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. Like, let's not, no, thank you. Um, then rule number 3 is put away your electronics. You talked about this.
This
Like,
is the most irritating one to me, I think, of all of them. This is saying that if somebody has gifted you their time to be the presenter or the participant in a meeting, but you're in that meeting and you have your laptop and you're not just taking notes because you're actually sending off emails or you're chatting with somebody else, the author says it better than I could say it. It is rude. And it sends a message that the meeting is unimportant and unworthy of your attention. It clutters the room with noise from notifications, tapping on your screens, and once one person does it, others will follow. The group will treat the meeting without the respect it deserves. This one to me is like highlighted, starred,
mhm.
written all over in this book because it is very distracting, especially for somebody who might be neurodivergent or ADHD, or
Yeah.
just simply wanting to listen to
Yep.
the speaker if the person sitting next to you clearly isn't present. I've been to numerous meetings, Sam, where the person is typing away and the presenter will say, Jane, what do you think about that? And then the person is completely caught off guard because Jane is not listening. Jane is
Mhm.
typing emails to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then Jane will say, oh, can you repeat the question? Well, now you've just wasted the rest of the audience's time for repeating a question for you to bring
Yep.
your mind up to speed. Michelle King did a really awesome training for us years ago at a place we both worked on, something called switch tasking, which is that you
Mm.
are less productive and your brain is not able to keep up with you doing more than one thing at a time. So many people think multitasking is effective and it's completely not.
Yeah.
And so in this case, it is saying that if you aren't doing these certain things that you just said, showing up and coming prepared and not having your electronics out unless you really truly need them to take notes, the next rule is about listening. And if you're not there to listen, then why did you accept this meeting? Because you're not helpful to the rest of the
Yeah.
people in the meeting. And then the last one, or not the last one, next, the last one is what we just said about speaking up. If there's something you can contribute that adds value, please do. But there's also a downside to this as well. Is I don't know about you, but I've been to meetings where people will speak up on a topic that is completely out of scope on the agenda, and the leader may be fearful because maybe that person's place in the hierarchy dictates something or the other, instead of saying, hey, let's take that offline, we'll put it into a parking lot, or I've had somebody recently say into the dugout, which I
Love
thought you would
that.
like.
Love that. Oh, I'm
So
gonna
put
start
it,
using that instead of parking lot. That's good.
yeah, so put it into the dugout, and it's something that we'll talk about later. And I think the last one that Scott says here is also very important, which is do no harm.
Mm.
I've also been to meetings where, say, I think I've told you about this off mic, a meeting I went to not long ago turned into like an MMA match, pretty much, where there was just argument in front of the audience between two participants, and it was completely unprofessional, and it wasted the time of the people there because it had nothing to do with getting us progress, which was the point of having a meeting. So if you are in a meeting and you use it to voice discontent, be mindful in the way in which you deliver feedback. And again, working with a coach can help you with this. There are plenty of courses with enablement providers, even as well, about how to deliver effective feedback. Because I don't really think it's good to say constructive criticism, because criticism connotates something bad anyway. And it's usually destructive, not constructive.
Right. Yeah, and I think, to that point, right, one of the best leadership skills that I think people can build for themselves is restraint. And to me, that is a self-leadership skill, but it is so important that just because you've got a strong opinion or you disagree with something or whatever, right? Like a leader knows and can discern when you got to say something, when you don't need to say something. And when you're harming something or someone in a situation, the restraint is necessary, right? Like, let's take this offline, let's put it in the dugout and talk about it after the game, right? Like, let's take this and I'll make a note that I need to talk to Sally about this later because, I really do think it's an issue, right? Or no, like, hey, this is when we've got to do stuff, because that do no harm is just so critical, right? Like, it's like these things are in order, right? For a reason, right? Showing up, coming prepared, putting away the electronics, listening, right? Speaking up, and then doing no harm. Like, when you leave a meeting, you should have done no harm. I think when you leave this life, you should have done no harm, is really the key here. But that's just so ultra critical. And you need the leadership skill of restraint often to do no harm. When do you hold back and talk about it later? Doesn't mean you don't express your opinion. It doesn't mean you become a pushover. It means I know when and how to have the conversation with somebody, right? There is no then that arguing in front of an audience that just is hurting the whole thing. It's, let's take this offline and have a conversation, to the side on it. But yeah, I think they're great rules. And honestly, like, if people could just follow these, like, meetings would improve by like 75% overall. But then he goes into like how to run a tidy meeting. So when you're not the attendee, but the person in charge of it, really what should you do? I do still recommend the 15 minutes, including Q&A. I think that's still my gold standard on all this stuff. But one, he says, first, know what you want to accomplish. Second, think carefully about the participants. And you and I both, Maxwell leadership team members. And that's his big thing, is like, you've got to focus, especially when you talk about speaking, things like that, is know your audience, know who you're talking to, and understand what they want, and consider them first and foremost, really, in what you're doing. So one, define what the goal of this meeting is. Two, understand the audience and what they really need to get out of it. Third, state the goals in the invitation. Give people time to know this is why we're here, so that they can have that opportunity to be like, hey, I don't, does this make sense? Should I be here, right? Or here's something else we should think about, right? Like, way more effective if people have advance notice of like, these are the 3 things we're talking about. These are the decisions we want to make. Like, be specific. Helps everybody. It makes meetings way less painful. And then fourth is encourage participation. I think this goes to that what you were talking about earlier with, the person earlier in their career. You, as the leader, have to create space. You have to create safe space for people to voice what they need to ask their direct opinions, right? This is why teachers call you out by name in school, and they'll be like, hey, Sam, what do you think about this? Hey, what's your opinion on this thing that we're talking about, right? Like, pulling people in to the conversation is key and critical, but giving them the safe space to talk is, it is key here. And then the last 2 things are fifth, set of timelines for meetings and adhere to them. Like, that's my big thing. I've been really bad about this in my life. I kind of look at time as a construct and not a rule to follow sometimes, but you've got to respect the time. If the meeting is only 20 minutes, end it at 20 minutes, or say, hey, we're at time. Is it okay if we continue for 2 more minutes? Is it okay, right? Get that permission. Don't just blast through the end of a meeting. Don't just, start 5 minutes late because everybody's showing up late. Start on time, end on time. Get permission if you've got to move a little bit. And then it says, finally, just as a meeting needs a purpose and an agenda, it also needs a recap. This is the thing people miss all the time. Drives me absolutely crazy. It's like, we send the agenda, send the recap, talk about the recap at the end. Hey, here's the things that I got, because then you can get that agreement and that discernment. Like, how tight and neat is that meeting if ahead of the meeting we all know what we're talking about? At the end of the meeting, you recap and you say, okay, we did decide this, or we didn't get to this, or here's what we're going to do, right? And then you can even email those things out after. But a tidy meeting, I think, really does follow these 6 kind of guidances.
It would be super easy, if you're reading along in the book, for you to just type these out and keep them handy. Maybe even, Sam, it's something that we can do is just give it as like a one pager for people, because I'm thinking about this workshop that I'm about to have and some of the things that I want to bring into that meeting next week that I can apply from here. Here's one part in here, though, that I'm not sure that I agree with, and yet I do agree with it. So I'm a little conflicted. So there's a part where when the author's talking about encouraging participation, he says, avoid going around the table and asking each person to say something. And I actually do this at the end of meetings. If it's my team, I'm the leader of the team and it's my team, because I want everybody to feel like they can offer up an opinion. But I think that where people get thrown off is if you specifically said, like, Sam, tell me what your opinion is about this one specific thing. You may not have an opinion on it, or you might feel caught off guard because you have an opinion that's conflicting on it. But I think if you use this in a way to say, hey, Sam, as we're going around now to conclude the meeting, what's maybe one of the biggest things you took away from our time together today, or something we missed? It's the way in which, as a presenter, you ask that question for a person to feel comfortable to say something back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I disagree with the general statement he's got here about like avoiding ask each person to say something, because one, I think at the beginning of the meeting, it is a good way to warm people up. If people sit in a meeting for 20 minutes and never say a word, and then they have something to say, it's much harder to do it if they never said anything for the 20 minutes. So like, I love it at the beginning as a way of like, but again, like, don't just generally like ask them something specific, right? This is why we do icebreakers. Like, everybody like rolls their eyes at icebreakers, but icebreakers exist for this reason, to get us talking, to get us engaged. And yeah, I love it as a recap at the end too, of like, hey, what was the big thing? Is there anything that you think we missed that's left, right? Like, again, just kind of end capping it with like, I value you talking here, and I value what you got or your opinions or whatever, like on the end. And then, yeah, if there's somebody where you're like, expertise, or hey, giving that space and creating that space. And that's kind of, I think, how he set this up, is like, don't do this, encourage real participation with open-ended questions, which again, like, I agree with that. And I feel like that might be where your conflict comes in, because the sentiment he's going for is right, but I think that blanket statement he made is wrong. I agree with you. I don't think it's right. I think it's wrong.
I think it's wrong too. So next week, we're going to be talking about something that is also super important, because many of you listening either have been a part of transformation, or you're in the midst of a transformation, or you will be, because I think all of us go through change at some time in our careers. And next week's topic is about tidying your teams, which can be scary, but it can also be really healthy for your team, for you, and for the company that you work for. But I think that this particular chapter that's coming up next week is one that may hit some nerves for some of the listeners, because of the fact that it's about tidying up a team that you may be a part of or that you may be leading.
Yeah. And the thing I'll say about this one too, that I didn't think about when I read the title versus when I got into the chapter. And if you're following along with us and doing this actively with us, a good thing to think about is like, think about it not just of like the actual organization hierarchy that you belong to, but the like groups that you're a part of too. Like, think, and you can do this, I think you can extend this out in your life as well, of like, what are the teams, organizations, groups that I'm a part of, and thinking about how to tidy those up. So like, a lot of times at work, we're on a business women's network. We're part of, this group or that group or whatever, like you ran the coaching program for the last company that we worked for. Like, that's a team as much as the team that you worked for was. So ahead of next week, do put that in your mind, I think, of like, what are all the teams that I belong to? What are all the groups that I show up for? And again, if you've gone through all your meetings, it should be easy to grab the list pretty well, because it's not just about organizational cleanup. It is also about some of those smaller, maybe like subcommittees or groups that you're a part of as well.
I think the last thing too about next week that's going to be super positive, I hope, is that it is also about looking at the structure that's inside of those teams, whether it is an official team in your company, like your working group, or these auxiliary teams, to get the best out of the purpose and of the people. So if you have people who are not right fit, and they know that their ikigai table has a wobbly leg, for example, what are the things that you can do to help steady that. Remember, the book is about joy. So this is a positive book. It's about bringing more joy at work. And so I am looking forward to next week because it is difficult to have joy when you have to do things like tidying up your teams and tidying up your networks and tidying up your relationships and even tidying up your desk, which isn't always very fun to do.
I don't know. I really enjoy it. But I think I'm with Marie and I'm like just a tidying geek about all this stuff. Like I love it. I actually loved to organize teams when I, was the manager director, all that sort of good stuff. Like making sure teams were running as efficiently and as well as possible. Like I had never had any fear about like looking at that and embracing that. And so I'm excited to talk about next week. It's an interesting chapter, but I think something that will resonate with a lot of people, especially if you've gone through a lot of reorganizations, which most people in giant corporations have in the last few years.
I'll close my part by saying I don't get joy cleaning my desk, but I have a lot of joy once it's clean. So
Yeah, there you go. You gotta focus on the outcome, focus on the what you get out of it.
exactly. Well, it's great as always to be here with you today. My meeting time with you always is some of my most favorite time of the week. So thank you for that, Sam. And if you're listening along, we hope that that's the same for you when you join us each week. And if you haven't joined us each week, there's lots and lots of episodes you can go back to and listen. And if you have a friend or a colleague that would get value from this, would you please share our show with them? We're on Substack at WOYB for What's on Your Bookshelf. But for this week, my name is Denise Russo, and on behalf of my friend Sam Powell, this has been another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf.